Well, Scott, thank you so much for meeting with me today. And I was wondering if we could start off. I'm sure introductions are unnecessary, but it's always good to hear about people in their own words. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I am the mission pilot for Polaris Dawn. Polaris Dawn is a space exploration program that's up to 3 missions. It's very operationally driven with the intent to identify some of the challenges that we face with evolution of space exploration, specifically working with partnership with SpaceX. They're making the transition from the Falcon 9 rocket Dragon capsule to Starship, their next generation. And our program, we're working to contribute and identify some of the developing technologies and help them advance space exploration. And it culminates into the first crewed Starship. But the first mission that we're involved with is called Polaris Dawn. And that's where I'll be the mission pilot for. Background wise, I was U.S. Air Force for 20 years, flying F-16s, former Thunderbird demonstration pilot, graduate of the Fighter Weapons School, the Air Force version of Top Gun. And then I started working for Jared Isaacman about 5-6 years ago with a company called Draken International. And then most recently, I was a mission director on the Inspiration 4 side for their mission to space last year called Inspiration 4, which was the first all-civilian mission to space.
And also saw that, and you may have done more since then, but that you've completed 15 Ironman.
I have. I actually most recently got the bug. I remember, I think we were in Hawaii, and it just brought back a lot of memories from the Kona, the World Championships there. So I started training again. I signed up for an Ironman next summer after our Polaris mission in Lake Placid, New York. So yeah, it's a big part of my life. Our life, my wife, Kristen, and I run quite a bit.
Oh, that's awesome. And I see that you did your bachelor's in New Hampshire.
I did, yeah. So I grew up, I was born in Tennessee, but more or less raised in New Hampshire, seacoast area. There's 13 miles of coastline near a town called Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in a town called Durham. And that's where I went to elementary school, high school, and then my undergrad at the University of New Hampshire, a degree in outdoor education. So spent 4 years scuba diving, rock climbing, winter mountaineering, whitewater rafting. It was a really fun experience, but that was many, many moons ago.
I lived in Exeter, New Hampshire, 2014 through 2015.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. We moved to Exeter in 2015.
Oh wow! We probably just passed each other, but yeah, my oldest son was going to the Phillips Exeter Academy.
Oh wow, PEA.
Yeah, and after a year of him being away, we decided we missed him too much, and we couldn't convince him to come back, so we decided to move up there. But then
oh my gosh, that's crazy. Yeah, we lived in Exeter. We just moved to Colorado about a year, just over a year ago from Exeter. So
oh really? Wow.
Yeah. Exeter High School, though. The kids were going to Exeter High School, not PEA.
Yeah, it's an interesting town. I really liked the year we had there. It was really fantastic.
Yeah. Where did you live? Not to get too distracted, but
so you know where the train station is?
Yep.
So we were like one street over from that, between there and the school. I forgot the name of the road, but we were closer to some of the classrooms than some of the dorms were, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then Lexi's, the house was built.
Was Lexi's there? Burger joint?
I don't know.
You would have remembered this one. It's right there by the train station, but.
Oh, I didn't become like the like some other. It changed its name. It was like New Age Burger Joint or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember the burger joint there. And then, of course, the ice cream place. Even in the dead of winter, they had a line coming out of it.
I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, it's a neat little, it's got a lot of character and
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But being from Texas, dealing with the snows was completely a new experience.
where in
Yeah.
Texas?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I live in Houston, and
Houston. Okay, all right. So you're right there.
I'm right here, and we had just moved up there for that year. And then I like to kid with everybody that, once the snow started falling, we ran back to Texas. But we actually, it turned out to be more. We were working at HP at the time, and they were in the process of kind of breaking apart into four different companies, and all the opportunities were back here in Houston. So we kind of
Yeah.
came here for that. So yeah, well, you're talking about Starship and how space exploration is sort of changing, and I I feel like, I mean, my career really got started with the .com, the internet boom. Whenever I got out of high school in '94, anybody who knew anything about computers could get a job any place. And I feel like the 2020s are to space what the 1990s were to the internet. And Starship is sort of like the Netscape browser, is kind of how I think about it. And I was wondering if those analogies kind of make sense to you and what you think of them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's truly amazing what's going on right now in the space industry, and especially with SpaceX. They're certainly leading the way. It's hard to argue. Um, the advancements and their continued development of innovation, and their progress. I mean, they're doing a launch every 6 days, and it's unfortunately it's continued to be just ho hum the expectation, but it's if you take a moment and pause and realize what they're able to accomplish, it's truly amazing, and it's fun to be a part of. We're blessed to be in this partnership with them and get an opportunity to see what they're doing on a daily basis, whether it's at Hawthorne, at the headquarters, all these young pups, the men and women of SpaceX. I mean, I think like average age is like late 20s. Brilliant people. And it's fun just to see what they're able to accomplish. And then you got Starship down there. We try to come up with any excuse we possibly can to get down there. And every time you go down there, it's a new place. The first time we went down there, it reminded me of like Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. It was just this makeshift in the middle of nowhere. All the resources were being developed and created by SpaceX. And then, fast forward a couple months, a year, it's just they've created this city down there, and it's really, really neat to see. And not to mention the rockets on the pads to, it provides quite a backdrop. It's just impressive. And back to your point about the development, who knows what the future looks like. I wish I had more creative brain bites than what I see on Hollywood as far as what the future holds and what it's going to be like. But it's certainly something that our next generations, hopefully my kids, and my grandkids are going to be able to be a part of. And it's going to be happenstance. The Starship flight 745 loading to go to the moon, go to Mars. And it just becomes, a part of our world and our level of transportation. So I'm excited. Hopefully I'm around long enough to see some of these evolutions happen.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I heard one person kind of put in this context that this is the decade where the mission patch gets replaced with the boarding pass.
Actually, I might have to use that one. That one's pretty cool. We're very proud of our patch, but yeah, that might be just a ticket stub for sure.
Could you imagine if commercial airlines did have patches like space flight, like all the passengers get together and they're like designing their patch before they go on the airplane?
Absolutely, those artists would be a lot busier.
It's kind of interesting how things change. I, in a As it becomes more commonplace, it also loses some of its specialness. And I guess, I mean, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, going to space right now is still considered to be, even though it's fairly routine, it's very few people get to do it, and it's still considered to be special. And we still hold up our astronauts as being um, really important people. But as we start approaching the thousands of people going in space a year, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, then it becomes routine, and we don't really, the place of being an astronaut really kind of diminishes. But what are your thoughts and feelings around that?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. There's certainly a transition that's happening. To your point, it's still a very austere and risky endeavor. There's still plenty of things that we need to accomplish in the development of certain technologies and SpaceX and other entities are working to develop those innovations necessary to make it more routine. But to your point, it certainly is something that is not happenstance per se to launch a crew. It's still a significant milestone. We just brought home Crew 4. SpaceX brought home Crew 4. Was that yesterday?
Uh-huh.
And they're training us. They're training Crew 6, and it's still a fairly significant effort to get trained up. We're in the middle of our training, and despite the fact that our mission's only 5 days, I say only, but relative to 6 months and those longer endeavors on the ISS, we still put forth a lot of resources and effort to make sure that we are trained appropriately, because we just can't afford any setbacks. God forbid anything occurs. It's just something that we need to mitigate that level of risk down to a 0.000% to ensure that we are fully prepared and that we can continue to move, push the envelope, but still maintain that steady level of progress. Just for our training alone, I break it down into more or less 3 phases that we're working on. You got phase 1 is the basics, the fundamentals, understanding the systems, just like you would for, an airline pilot would do for a commercial flight, or a fighter jet pilot would do to learn the procedures, the checklists, the protocol. So that's kind of where our focus has been for this phase 1, getting comfortable with each other, the crew, familiarity. And then phase 2 is more the specialized training that we're focused in on based on the objectives that we set forth with Polaris Dawn, the first EVA, the altitude record that we're trying to set, the communications that we're trying to test with Starlink laser communication, their satellite network. And then all the science and research, 40 experiments that we have lined up. So that's where we're spending a lot of our time right now in that phase 2 of training. And then lastly, the fun stuff, but the necessary training with phase 3 is kind of that team dynamic, getting comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And that includes the scuba diving, climbing Cotopaxi down in Ecuador, the fighter jet training that we do on a routine basis. We did the 0G like two or 3 days ago. And we tested some of the experiments and the equipment that we're going to have up on orbit. And we did the centrifuge and the altitude chamber. So all those opportunities, each and every one challenges us individually as a team to be able to build those dynamics necessary. Because once you're on orbit, there's no reset button that you have in the simulator. There's no in a similar fashion, when you climb a mountain, you're on the mountain. There's no easy way to get down. So you got to deal with the weather and the hospitable environment like you do in space. So it's been fun. It's been challenging. We still got a long road ahead of us with 5 months-ish to go until launch. But we'll be ready. And hopefully, over time, we've taken probably be somewhere in the realm of 8 to 9 months to prepare for our mission. Whereas, historically speaking, NASA, it's 3 to 4 years of intense training, and eventually over time that will evolve and whittle down to where it will be routine. You go through, a day's worth of VR intense training, and then you load on your spacecraft and go to the moon, go to Mars, or go wherever that destination might be.
I mean, that sounds awesome. Scott, I did want to just check on your time. I know I had scheduled for 15 minutes, but do you have, I mean,
Sure.
how much time do you have?
Yeah, we can certainly go over.
Okay.
It's early here, so I just got to feed the kids breakfast. That's it.
Well, I definitely don't want to be coming between them and breakfast. I know that's not a good spot to be. Um, well, I've been asking people on the street, at a Starbucks, at the mall, wherever I could find people, did you know that we're going to the moon? And most people say no, they have no idea that NASA's planning to send astronauts to the moon. Uh, I, and, people's awareness is very low about what our space activities are, what we're trying to accomplish. And in reality, I mean, a lot of our messaging is very, I think even in the space community, it'd be very hard pressed to talk about what our purpose is. And I mean, I guess first of all, has your experience been that people are generally unaware of what we're doing in space?
Honestly, absolutely. I don't know how many times I've been asked when they find out that I'm going to space, one of the first questions I get is, "Are you going to the moon?" And it's just like, now you got to realize, okay, how do I, explain the purpose of our mission, and where we're at within the industry, within space exploration. And it does boil down to messaging and getting the information out there. That's why we did the documentary with Inspiration 4, and really tried to stay focused on our purpose. And that's why we're going to do a documentary for this mission with Polaris Dawn. Not only does it get the information out there and brings the public along with us, because you talk to Jerry, talk to the crew. We'd love to have like 24/7, like the Truman Show, playing 24/7, just to show the public what it's like to be up there on orbit versus just these snippets. So we're working on the audio video opportunities while we're on space. But that's just one example of how we can try to bring the public along in this journey and get the messaging out there. SpaceX does a great job with their webcasts, especially everything around a crewed event with the launch of Crew 5 and then bringing home Crew 4. And then they'll certainly hopefully do it for us, which will again provide more exposure to the public and bring them along this journey.
And that sounds wonderful. And I look forward to feeling like I'm in the cabin right alongside of you as you're.
Yeah, it's cool. With the EVA, we're working on different opportunities or different options for recording that, and by some of the technologies, they're modifying our trunk with Starlink capability. So hopefully we can test that and push it to its limit to see how much we improve the latency, lower latency, and more broadband, and have that dialogue that we're having right now. Maybe we'll have it up on orbit and have these interviews and discussions with families that you see on all the TV shows and series, and be able to communicate better, because it's a necessary challenge that we need to overcome with long duration space flight. We got to be able to have those communications that are valid, not delayed hours, months, days. It needs to be something of a better source, like laser communication.
Now, when you look out into the future, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you think about like a time range of like 200 years, Where do you think humanity would have gotten, or where do you hope we could get in 200 years in terms of space development and uh, you know, branching out beyond the Earth?
Oh man, that's a tough question. Just because we're not brainwashed, but certainly influenced by Hollywood and what we see on Star Wars and Star Trek and all the different space movies. Unless you have that creative vision to be able to morph what the future looks like, it's hard not to replicate what you see there and articulate something different. But it's hopefully we find a balance. If you look back in the history of humanity over time, I pray that we do have balance, that we don't deplete the resources that we have here on Earth. But we do take advantage of space exploration and do continue to push the envelope and explore, whether that's the colonization of the moon, Mars, and beyond, or it's just a constellation of starships that are docked together, and that's the destination. But we're certainly headed in that direction. SpaceX is leading the way. They're extremely intelligent and creative and where they're going, and very dedicated, hardworking. So they certainly have the recipe for getting us, making that progress in evolution. But 200 years is a long time. I hope we do it right. We do it right here on Earth, and preserve what we have and take care of these delicate resources. Everyone talks about the overview effect. You look back down and it's a very, very, very thin layer and atmosphere that is fragile, for lack of a better description. So I hope we continue to take care of these resources and find that balance along the way and still make progress with the development and colonization of future planets.
Yeah, William Shatner, was saying that his trip to space was actually very sad and terrifying, in terms of the realization of how fragile, things on Earth are.
Yeah.
And let's see, I like to turn that 200-year question around the other way. So imagine you're a high school student 200 years from now, and 22, and you're in history class doing a project on the 2020s. What do you hope is worth remembering and writing about that happens in this decade in 200 years?
Wow, that's a great question. We are certainly going through a significant transition, and hopefully we're here to realize exactly how that's happening. You describe early space exploration with Project Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, shuttle era, and this transition. And it was everyone used to gather for a shuttle launch. It was a big deal. Everyone showed up, and now it's getting fewer and fewer spectators, other than the locals and the residents in that general area at Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg, to watch these launches. But progress continues to be made. The fact that SpaceX is launching that frequently is just mind-blowing. And we'll continue to make that progress and that leap in space exploration. And, we're going to make this transition going back to the moon. And I think that progress will be exponential once we do get to the moon. And as we continue to, develop and colonize that location, and then, the progress is not going to stop. So, hopefully those high schoolers are reading about that progress. Polaris is just a blip, in the history books. And we just want to contribute as much as we possibly can, recognize some of those challenges, and help humanity understand and get the data points necessary to make that progress and continue to move the needle. Because it's fun, you know, it's necessary, and it's a you know, human nature is curious by nature, and it's only natural for us to continue this progress, and we want to be a part of it. And hopefully, you know, they're reading a little bit about it, maybe a paragraph in that textbook. But we'll do our part as much as we possibly can.
I wonder if Polaris Dawn might be remembered like crossing the Atlantic in aviation, or maybe the Channel, the English Channel, or something like that. You know, I mean, it's a huge event, a private mission doing the first EVA, potentially going to Hubble and keeping that alive longer. It's really exciting.
Well, I appreciate that gesture. I think, you know, it's more about what SpaceX continues to accomplish on a grand scale. And I'm repeating myself, but we're just blessed to be a part of this opportunity. We're glad to be partners with SpaceX, but what they're able to accomplish routinely is the true milestone and progress, and that's what you're really going to read about in these history books for sure.
Well, Scott, I think that's probably a good note to wrap things up on. I did have, I'm not sure how the librarian in my mind works, but a couple of facts kind of came to my mind about Exeter. I think the ice cream shop was Stillwell's, and yeah. And then the burger joint that I remember was called Karma Burger. I think that was, yeah, I don't know, but they had changed their name multiple times, and I would have thought they may have changed their name again, but
yeah,
it's right there, kind of on the same street as the train station. So
yeah, just like Portsmouth, I mean, the turnover rate of all these different restaurants and vendors is quite fast. But it's I love the Seacoast. We were just there a couple of days ago, visiting family. We're going back for Thanksgiving, so it's a home away from home for sure.
Well, Scott, I'll let you get on with breakfast, and thank you so much for your time. And I got to tell you, it's such a joy to run into you and the rest of the gang kind of unexpectedly a few weeks back.
Absolutely, yeah. We it was pretty cool to see Saturn V. You know, the grand scale of that machine, that vehicle is just, and then the capsule on top with a couple human beings, 3 human beings in there. It's mind blowing for sure. And Starship's going to be the same way. I mean, you look at the scale, and it's just, we were there for the initial announcement from Elon. And it's just like, wow.
I mean, at some point, even if you like double the height, it's like so big, it's incomprehensible. You know, it's like off scale high type of thing.
And then they're going to be launching 3 a day, every day. You know, it's crazy.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. I hope to run into you again sometime. And anyway, I have a good rest of your day.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time, Nathan.
Bye-bye.
Bye.